Gajananam Bhutaganadisevitam Kapita Jambopala Sarabhakshitam Umasutam Shokavinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwara Parapam Kajam Shadananam Kumkumarakta Varanam Mahamatim Divyamayuravahanam Rudrasya Sunam Surasanyanatam Guham Sharanam Prapadye Ya kundendu dushara haradavala ya shubra brastra vritam ya vinavara varamanditakara ya shveta padma asana ya brahmachuta shankara prabhiti vir devai sada pujita samampatu saraswati bhagavati nishesha jajapaham Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachitananda Murtaye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Shri Shivanandaya Te Namaha Shri Vishnu Devanandaya Te Namaha Om Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvata Sadike Sharanye Trayambake Gauri Narayani Namostute Narayani Namostute Om Sahanao Bhavatu Sahanao Bonaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvina Maditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Om Peace 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 Om Bolo Satguru Sivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Bolo Swami Vishnu Devananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
All right, so we're going to begin our last workshop of the 2026 Near-Death Experience Symposium. And I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. Dr. Eben Alexander spent 25 years as an academic neurosurgeon at institutions like Harvard Medical School before a week-long coma and a transcendental near-death experience redefined his understanding of reality. Now a best-selling author of books like Living in a Mindful Universe, he works to reconcile quantum physics with spiritual experience. He is joined here by Karen Newell, a personal development specialist and pioneer in audio meditation. As the co-founder of Sacred Acoustics, Karen teaches practical techniques for exploring consciousness, helping others connect with their inner guidance and achieve emotional wellness. And like yesterday, halfway through the session, there will be a meditation and you will be invited to lie down. So we have some space in the back for you all. With that, please help me in welcoming Dr. Eben Alexander and Karen Newell.
Thank you so much, Krishna. Beautiful to be here. Always a little bittersweet to be at the last session of the symposium. But we have really enjoyed meeting so many of you who we haven't met before, and of course renewing friendships with many who we have met before. It's been a tremendous joy. So we're trying to bring this together now under the kind of rubric, the title of this session, Making Wiser Choices. So I just want to try and steer some of the energy and discussion that we've offered up in the last few days here to help contribute towards making wiser choices. So I talked last night and other talks here about my amnesia. And then, of course, the amnesia was so important for me to ultimately get the big reality of the journey and not reject it because of my prior kind of fairly strong materialist beliefs. You know, brain creates consciousness. That was drilled into me for a long time, even though there was plenty of evidence to the contrary, that the brain is really more of just a filter, a transceiver. It's not even the repository of memories. You know, we discussed that in our book, Living in a Mindful Universe. Neurosurgeons have wondered for the last 115 years of doing craniotomies, you know, where is memory stored in the brain? And you've never had a case where any brain resection led to loss of long-term memory. And it's really the last nail in the coffin of materialist neuroscience to say that memories are not stored in the brain. But you can find evidence for that even going back to 1975. Dr. Wilder Penfield, a very renowned neurosurgeon, respected Canadian neurosurgeon, who had spent most of his life stimulating the brain in awake patients. He was in better place than most people to make statements about the relationship of brain and mind, or brain and phenomenal experience. And I've done a lot of those operations myself. They're called awake craniotomies, where you are resecting a tumor or vascular lesion near a critical area, speech or motor. And sometimes the safest way to do the operation is with a patient awake. What that really means is you sedate them, use local anesthesia in the scalp, open that up, and then you can lighten on the sedation. The patient's perfectly comfortable, and yet you have access to a big part of brain there for stimulation, mapping, possible resection. And the interesting thing is, in his book, Mystery of the Mind, in '75, Wilder Penfield made it very clear how grateful he was as a materialist neuroscientist, staunchly dedicated to the scientific investigation of the brain, to realize you cannot explain consciousness and mind from the workings of the brain alone. He embraced that and said his kind of tendency towards natural spirituality was now greatly supported by his scientific work. Sadly, that book was written when he had fairly advanced cancer, and a lot of his colleagues kind of dismissed it, said the cancer had influenced his thinking. But if you read The Mystery of the Mind, you'll realize it's a very well-written book by an extremely intelligent scientific investigator. But the world wasn't ready back in '75. The world is a lot more ready to wake up now. Many things have happened, with near-death experiences, all the evidence of the reincarnation data, etc. So any scientist with a serious interest in the brain-mind connection needs to be far more open-minded. And where they're all going with this is away from that materialist focus on the brain as the origin of consciousness. In many ways, the brain actually kind of constricts and confines our phenomenal experience. And that's why meditation and centering prayer are so important, because they are ways to reconnect across the veil of that primordial mind. The same place our higher soul gets involved in a near-death or a death experience. To me, it's important to acknowledge that science, in many ways, is leading this charge of understanding. If you had to apply a philosophic term to where I think we are now in our understanding, it would not be panpsychism. A lot of people make that mistake, but panpsychism is just a view that it's a materialist view, that somehow you can hypothesize these kind of proto-consciousness elements that are associated with subatomic particles and pretend that when all these particles combine in the physical world, that those proto-consciousness elements combine in any kind of meaningful way. It's a kind of a nonsensical description, but it's where people go when they realize that pure materialism is a dead end. It doesn't work at all. Given telepathy, remote viewing, all the evidence for non-local consciousness, as we discuss in our book, Living in a Mindful Universe, you find that it just doesn't work. The non-local aspects are especially confirmatory. So it's a scientific revolution, and the good news is there's tremendous wisdom out of spiritual traditions going back 5,000 years that they're on the right pathway. And it reminds me of that T.S. Eliot poem where he goes through this tremendous journey, and then at the end of it all, he discovers he's right back where he started. And but he has so much more wisdom about what that reality is. So I talked last night about the kind of flying fish, and especially that Indra's net or living tapestry vision that I had. But the important thing there is it's trying to combine that kind of holographic principle that I also mentioned. That's a deep principle in science, of physics, about how the whole is reflected in the parts and the parts reflect the whole. And that has a lot to do with the kind of dynamic we face as human beings on this world. Now, before my coma, that kind of materialist science world that I was kind of deeply kind of stricken by, would even scoff at you if you claim to have free will, because they think it's all, the stuff of the brain is physical stuff. They said it's following the laws of physics, chemistry, biology. Where would you possibly inject free will? They also had arguments about conservation of energy. If you've got this system kind of following all those natural laws, you'd have to inject energy somewhere to alter that evolution. And yet, John C. Eccles, the Nobel Prize winner from Australia, a physiologist who won the Nobel Prize in 1963, made it very clear in a book he wrote that came out in the late 80s called How the Self Controls Its Brain, that because of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, there was actually no problem with examining how neurons fire or don't fire. It has to do with the field effect of the quantum entanglement field. So there's top-down causality. I've mentioned that kind of concept as opposed to the bottom-up, which assumes that understanding all the subatomic particles, how they interact, explains our world. Well, it really doesn't. We need that top-down causality to make any kind of sense of it. In quantum physics, there's a mathematician, George F.R. Ellis, who's written extensively about all of that, about top-down causality in quantum physics. And I think that's really where the answer lies, is we need a much more focus on that. Has to do with also understanding the difference between subjective and objective. No human being has ever lived in anything other than inside their own consciousness, a subjective reality. We extrapolate and postulate this external physical consensus of reality, and yet quantum physics shows us very clearly that none of that exists independent of the mind of the observer. So we're really, in a scientific sense, starting to get closer and closer to this notion of will, soul, spirit, and how it interacts with the physical world. Now, a huge part of this, and we've mentioned a little bit of this getting to this point, is the extreme importance of life reviews. Your life flashing before your eyes. You know, we've heard that phrase for a long time, and many, many people know what that is. And that is something that you can see not only in a near-death experience, but certainly in a death experience, and in shared death, and in kind of other settings where, you know, after-death communications, et cetera. These are all ways of awakening us to the ongoing connection we share with loved ones who've left the physical world. Now, the data that I'm going to refer to, as I confessed, I didn't have an Eben Alexander life review because I would have paid too much of a price for that by bypassing the amnesia, and that would have tricked me into rejecting the whole thing. But I did see life reviews and reincarnation in profound fashion, especially in that the network vision, the Indra's net that I mentioned last night. But in the Journal of Near-Death Studies, in the fall of 2021, Dr. Bruce Grayson, who is a very skeptical psychiatrist, his father was a biochemist, and Grayson was first exposed to some extraordinary experiences in his patients back in the early 1970s. Things that happened in people who had been close to death that he had no explanation for, and yet they were striking kind of abilities that these people demonstrated when their brain was off. And in this review, Grayson discusses almost 700. It was 698 near-death experiences or life reviews that happened in a database with over 1,000 NDEs. And he generally gives the figure that about half of NDEs in his database are associated with life reviews. So they're a very common feature of these, and given the commonality of life reviews, of near-death experiences, and we can judge that from Dr. Pim van Lommel's prospective study published in the esteemed scientific journal Lancet back in 2000. And Dr. van Lommel did a prospective study of all cardiac arrest patients at several hospitals in the Netherlands over a period of time. And a prospective study is much more valuable than a retrospective, where you say, who's had an NDE? Let's talk about that. No, you want to look forward and say, how many people who have cardiac arrests have an NDE? And the figure he came up with is about 1 in 5. And that's been confirmed in many other ways, many other studies. That's kind of a general figure. But that means we have literally, 100 million plus near-death experiences who have walked this planet in the last many years. Important to point out, I think all religious systems, spiritual systems, have come from people who had extraordinary personal experiences, near death, what have you, and they come back to this world realizing the universe is much bigger than they thought before, much grander, not just this little physical world. And I think that's a very important part of kind of really getting the importance of this in all of our lives. Now, in this study of these almost 700 life reviews, first of all, the lowest statistic is 37%. That's roughly a third who said their entire life was the subject of their life review. And you might wonder, in a 10-minute cardiac arrest, how does somebody go through their entire life? And again, I cannot stress enough, in that spiritual realm, it's timeless. That's why life reviews can involve birth to death, everything in between, past life events, potentialities for future life events, and it's all seen simultaneously. And that's part of the ineffability, to have that kind of clarity and to see all the interconnections when you're not, plodding along this earth like a river of time, but actually whoosh, it's all there. It starts to make much more sense. You see your life, your sense of purpose, your relationships in a much kind of cleaner, more revealing fashion. And that's why, and I'll also stress, of course, that we can do this through meditation and centering prayer. We can duplicate these kind of things. We can thin that veil and get in much richer contact with that primordial mind and gain all the same knowledge that somebody who's had a near-death experience can glean. So the NDE community, it's very important. The stories are out there to help people make sense of this. But the key is you don't have to have your own NDE. And the other point I was going to make about NDEs is all those, the various prophets and saints through the centuries and millennia who have shared their wisdom from these kind of shocking experiences. For much of history, they were very rare. In the late 1960s, doctors developed techniques to resuscitate cardiac arrest patients. That was no accident. That means that since the late 60s, this world has been populated by this tremendous, 100 million prevalence of these occurrences. And it's one of the reasons, even though they're kind of shocking in our culture, and certainly back in the 70s and 80s, people might not have talked about this so much, but thank God for Raymond Moody writing that book, Life After Life, in 1975. I think we have a tremendous debt of gratitude. I think he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. I'm going to put his name in for that. But at any rate, so 37%, their entire life is the subject of the life review. And there's no problem doing that when you're in a realm of eternity. 47%, almost half, said that it was like a reliving of events, not just a remembering, and that the events were still ongoing. So in many ways, it's a way of kind of making amends. Anything that if we mistreated others in this lifetime, in that life review, we have that opportunity to make amends and express our regret and show our promise of more loving, connecting, kindness activities in the future, and to really change our soul journey. Because that's really what this is all about, is soul growth and soul journeying, which is to come to a deeper understanding of who we are, and as Karen just put it, to become a better version of yourself. I think that's a nice, simple, beautiful way to put the simplicity of this. Now, 76%, so roughly 3/4, stressed that the review was from the perspective of everyone involved. And that's really the value of the life review. That's why we say the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, is written into the very fabric of the universe through this commonality and the prevalence of these life reviews in the NDE community. From the perspective of others is another way I often put this is we're sharing the dream of the one mind. But the beautiful thing is we're all like if you look at the one mind as a gem, a diamond, each of the facets is the contribution of a sentient being to the overall kind of structure and appearance of the diamond. So there is this beautiful sense, again, of the wholeness, the shared consciousness, the one mind, that God mind at the source of all of our conscious awareness, but in the same sense of each of us presenting a different little version of interaction. And it's how our souls interact, how we learn and teach each other, how we live our lives that really contributes to this kind of growth. I mentioned last night Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, his grand vision of the evolution of cosmic consciousness. And that's what each of us are contributing to. And that's all the evolution of consciousness is the contributions from individual sentient beings who are paying attention to their lives, and trying to come to a deeper understanding of shared meaning and purpose. Karen and I often define spirituality as really having three components. The first is just an acknowledgement of our shared mind, that we're all in the same mental space. The second ingredient is that we can find shared meaning in the events of these lives and in the lessons that we learn and share. And the third is that ultimately we share in purpose. Where is this all headed? What is the vision at the horizon? Where are we headed? And in my vision, in that beautiful network, there's that golden center. And again, that was the difference between my vision and a strict definition of Indra's net, was that there's actual meaning and purpose to where we're headed. It's not just a blind mechanistic wheel of suffering that we need to get off of. And I'm sorry, what's the... Oh, good. Yeah, I'm getting exactly to that. And the last thing to mention about the life reviews is that 84% of those who reported life reviews said they were more real than lived experience. That's very important to get. Often in those experiences, it's something I call knowledge through identification, where we become huge aspects of the scene. For me, knowledge through identification in my own journey included becoming one with the entire cosmos throughout all of eternity. And it might sound a bit grandiose, but that was certainly the sense that I got, and it was very humbling. And it was all about that God force and love and our interconnections and helping each other. So that golden rule is so important. And I love what religions have done to help promote the golden rule, but sadly, religious ideologies are also sometimes used as a bludgeon by people who want to control other people. So the religious ideologies can drift astray from some of the original teachings of the prophets. But that's where personal experience and kind of returning to some of these basic principles can be so helpful in getting us to making wiser choices. The free will, as I mentioned, is something that's crystal clear. Eccles pointed it out in his paper that there's no violation of energy conservation laws having to do with the firing or not firing of neurons. And that's very important, that it's not all a local effect, but a field effect, top-down causal effect of this cosmic mind dissociated into the little mental pieces that are our own consciousness that then determines our emerging reality. Okay. Karen is advising me to move along.
Lots of notes.
Yeah. That's the important stuff. Okay, she's going to get me right there. I had all kinds of other stuff, but that'll be for next time. But the reality is, we've been sharing these Sacred Acoustics sound files with you, and we intentionally don't want to tell people too much at the beginning about what we think the mechanism is for what's going on. But I think you all are now at a stage where it might actually help you to have an understanding of what we think is going on. So I want to discuss a little bit about binaural beats. They were first observed as a scientific phenomenon back in the 1800s. Prussian physicist Wilhelm Heinrich Dove noted that a pure tone in one ear and then a slightly different tone, say if it varies by 4, 10 cycles per second, anything up to about 20 cycles per second in the other ear. So for example, if we put a 100 hertz signal here, 104 hertz signal in here, the brain feels a 4 hertz wavering. It's kind of comparing the two signals, but it has tremendous power. I was attracted to meditation because of my discovery of an article about binaural beats. In Scientific American in, I think, October of 1973. It's by a guy named Gerald Oster, and it's called Auditory Beats in the Brain. And it's a very good description of the anatomy and physiology of what's going on in the lower brainstem to try and explain this wavering phenomenon. And I think that was part of the beginning, and then also at the same time, as often happens in our lives, I had another big signal, and that was I gave a talk at the University of Virginia. This was actually 2 years to the hour after I woke up from coma at their Division of Perceptual Studies, and was very well received by that group. but also met people from the Monroe Institute. And those of you who know Monroe Institute, it's deeply involved in the investigation of binaural beats. So that was a combined signal, the article and then meeting these two people. And that's what kind of drew me into it. And I started using binaural beats for meditation, found them to be incredibly powerful. And so I was wondering, as a neurosurgeon, what is going on there? And to me, the best explanation is to point to the phenomenon that many of us are familiar with. If you want to hypnotize somebody, a pendulum with eye movements following the pendulum back and forth, that's engaging circuits in the midbrain, in the brainstem, back and forth circuits, this oscillation. And there's something about that oscillation in the brainstem at that level that can tend to remove us from here-now sense of self, of our normal relationship of our consciousness with our bodies and our awareness. And that oscillation allows us to thin that. And so that we're not, I phrase it, it's like a monotonization of information. That oscillation is what allows our conscious awareness to then be set free. And I think that in large measure is what's going on. The power of it is because there's a general principle in evolutionary biology that if you're interested in a function, in this discussion that function is consciousness, look at the anatomic structure, the brain, and look at the evolutionary history of that anatomic structure to try and understand more deeply the origins of the phenomenon. And in that discussion, what you realize is that most of the sounds, chants, anthems, hymns you might have ever heard in your life are processed mainly in the acoustic cortex of the temporal lobes, circuits that mainly have evolved in the last 2 to 3 million years in primates and Homo sapiens. Very, very different are these tones coming from Sacred Acoustics. They are impacting a circuit that's even more primitive than that midbrain circuit that's used for the hypnotic stimulation. And also I'll point out that circuit is used for EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is an incredibly valuable and effective technique for treating post-traumatic stress disorder. EMDR also uses the midbrain for this fast oscillation. We're actually going much deeper in evolutionary history. We're going back to circuits that arose 300 million years ago, before mammals walked the earth. In fact, the circuit was originally designed as an alerting mechanism in animals that did not have vision. And it still works, so that when I hear a snap behind my head, that circuit, the superior olivary nucleus, calculates the arrival time of those two signals going 1,000 feet per second. And it uses a tens of microsecond clock to compare the arrival time. And that's what generates this powerful left-right signal way down in the lower brainstem. And I'm convinced that that is a huge part of what allows us to get into that hypnagogic space and get out into the beautiful realm of the one mind, that shared consciousness of all of our higher souls. That's why it can be so effective in meditation. As we've said before, it helps to use earphones, headphones, earbuds, what have you, to split the signal. But in a group like this, we can use speakers, and we still get great advantage because of the group doing it together. That kind of shared spiritual energy is very amplifying. But when you're on your own meditating, try to listen through headphones or earbuds to split the signal, and that's where you get more power to it. And what I've learned is to just let go. As Karen says in her guidance, just focus on that breathing in and out, and just ride those waves. You can start to feel the waves of that wah, 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 that kind of wavering sound. And that's what allows me, the big goal for me was to put that little monkey mind voice of the annoying roommate into timeout. And it's very effective at doing that. And that helps you to get in the same state you are in a near-death or a dying experience, where your actual soul and kind of higher spirit is liberated from the shackles and the restrictions of the physical brain. So without further ado, I think we're up to Q&A.
Yeah.
And we have exactly 10 minutes. So I'm on time and under budget. Okay. So, I think we have a talking stick out there.
Right
Yes.
here.
Hi, Doug.
My question is, have you or any of the other, like Bruce Grayson or Raymond Moody, any of the researchers and experiencers have any idea why in resuscitation it only happens 15 to 20% of people? Why not many more? Is there some reason why it doesn't happen that we know of?
Well, that is an excellent question. That comes up frequently. And usually when I see that put to experts like Bruce Grayson, I'm not sure we get a big answer. The answer I would try to give to that is that, to me, it's kind of admirable that it's 1 in 5. And I would also point out, and this came up in a question in a different group, that I think there's a big difference between experiencing it and remembering the experience. And sometimes, I think for various reasons, we're not really ready to bring that back. In fact, before this, we were having an informal discussion where I was discussing in my own life that there were 3 opportunities in my life that I could have had an incredible NDE, and yet I had nothing. Two of them were kind of skydiving near collisions when I was in college. One of those I write about in the book Proof of Heaven right at the beginning. And then the other was a near drowning accident in a neurosurgical meeting in Ixtapa, Mexico, where I was underwater for about 2 minutes after a tremendous wave collapsed on top of me. And I had this incredible sense of peace, but I didn't have any of the kind of visions or anything else of an NDE. And it could just be that I wasn't ready. But then in my NDE, boy, did I have the right ingredients to give me an incredible show.
Well, Eben, you often say that near-death experiences are tailored to the individual and their particular
true.
needs. So it could be that some people aren't going to respond to that kind of thing, and we're all just unique, and we'll get it in different ways.
Yeah. Very good question.
I've got 2 questions for you. One is I've heard from 2 friends who have had NDEs that they have the life reviews and they feel the pain they've caused others, the joy, but then they also feel those who have forgiven them. So they talk about the role of forgiveness, which makes me think it's really important for us to either ask for forgiveness or, forgive people so that they don't have to suffer that pain.
Absolutely.
And then the other question was around, do you think we're really entering in this period of us understanding our multidimensionality, our, expand itself, and we'll be able to use that to maybe help us solve problems, and because that's a lot of intelligence we can access, right? So curious to hear what you think about those 2 things.
Okay, well, I think first of all, to me, 2 of the most powerful ingredients we have as human beings in our spiritual journey: forgiveness, and that involves forgiving self for many, many things, and forgiveness of others, and also gratitude. For me, since my NDE, every single breath is a gift. It can be my last one, but it's such an incredible gift. I just have pure gratitude for it. So I think gratitude and forgiveness are absolutely essential. And then, are we actually making any progress? Well, this is where I would say the reason it's so important that the scientific community is involved in this, and that's because science, as a method of discovery, is a great way for human beings to come to some agreement. Now, the scientific community has all kinds of foibles, but the scientific method itself is not to be denied. And especially when you realize that science can move beyond just our materialistic measurement techniques. For example, a neuroscientist who wants to study psychedelic substances, does functional MRI and puts somebody on psilocybin or what have you, and then to their disappointment, the whole brain goes dark. So their tools don't work anymore. So we have to broaden our kind of definition of this. But the real science is, for example, what you see coming out of the University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies. Start reading their literature and you'll realize richly how science can be applied to all of this to help us come to a consensus agreement about what it all means. So I think that's a very important part. And we mentioned last night the BigelowInstitute.org, that collection of essays. Any scientist who dives into those essays will realize quickly that the evidence for the afterlife is already completely established beyond any reasonable doubt. And the essays come at it from every different direction. But BigelowInstitute.org is an excellent resource, certainly for people with a scientific interest in the afterlife. And it makes it clear that we're headed more towards a position of what philosophers call evolutionary panentheism than panpsychism. And that's evolutionary panentheism. Panentheism just means the God force in all. So that leaves us with the unity of the God force. Evolutionary is that we have free will and that we're all contributing to that God force and that God mind. So I think we're making progress.
Okay, I think I have a follow-up question to that. I'm just wondering, you talked about the large uptick in NDEs after the late 60s with the advent of resuscitation, and yet I think most would feel that since the late 60s, we've only come sort of further apart from some of these ideas like forgiveness and interconnection and compassion and all of that. And I guess I'm just wondering how you see that in the light of these experiences. And is it that maybe we shouldn't be so fixated on what's happening right now, because while it seems so important to us in the span of the timeless eternity, this is a blip, right?
Well, I would say that to me, looking back over history of the last few centuries, I used to kind of look at the wonderful, rise of materialist science and our success in science for medicine, communication, transportation. There are many ways science has contributed. But you cannot deny the ugly underbelly of science. The chemists committing their sin with machine guns, explosives, poisonous gas in World War I. Physicists committed a sin in World War II. And then we all were seduced by the successes of scientific materialism as we worked into the 60s, 70s, 80s. But that's where we started also running into incredible trouble with the complications of it, with our addiction to fossil fuels and climate change. It's basically we're threatening millions of species with extinction. All this one species, through its kind of mindless ignorance of doing the stuff that's allowed through science and technology. That's why the current convergence, I would say, is so important. I kind of see it like two ocean liners, giant ships on this converging pathway. One is the spiritual wisdom that has 5,000 years of history and spiritual traditions. The other, this giant leviathan of materialism, and that materialism gives you a false sense of separation. A lot of that thinking came through in the mid-20th century, and it was combined with confused thinking about Darwinian evolution and survival of the fittest in competition. And those two things together created a very toxic mix. And that's what we are recovering from now. And I would say, because to me, if you look in large scale at the violent crime and battlefield deaths and all that kind of thing, there was steady progress, improvement in humanity, especially late 20th, early 21st century. And then wham, 10 years ago, bam, we backslid tremendously with Ukraine, Middle East, etc. There have been some horrible backsteps. And what I would say is that as we approach a true paradigm shift, where we're really going to shift to this deep spiritual knowing that's been with us for 5,000 years, that the fundamental groups that are worried about that, they become inflamed. They go berserk. And that's what we're seeing. The current news cycle, the polarization in politics, a lot of the apparent insanity, all these headlines popping up on my iPhone every minute about kind of dire straits in the world, to me, are a symptom that we're on the verge of a tremendous paradigm shift. And that's the kind of recoil that you'll see before this gigantic shift can happen. But ultimately, any major shift in thinking like this depends on a lot of that negative energy too to drive it. And so that's where I think we're going to find that a lot of this kind of craziness of today will actually, over the next 5 to 10 years, result in a tremendous kind of upshift with more acceptance and understanding and utilization of these deep spiritual principles. And it moves away from that false sense of separation of materialist thinking into a much richer and scientifically compatible vision that is of the oneness, and that we all contribute to that. We have free will that contributes to the growth of that one mind. And that's what I think is happening. So it's easy to get a little depressed or distressed about some of that political stuff, but all is well. So, oh yes, of course, of course. So, sorry? Yes, so without further ado, we should now move on to the very best part of the show. I'm just the opener. Karen Newell.
Isn't he sweet? Thank you, Eben. So Eben has a couple times, he's talked about the life review quite a lot in all of his talks. I think you've mentioned the life review, and then you say, and Karen talks about the daily review. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And I don't know who asked about that, the importance of forgiveness and making amends, and how, we focus when we talk about life reviews that you'll feel the pain that you've caused others, but we forget to say you also feel the love that you've given others. And so imagine what your life review would be like if all you've been is a loving person. When you get there, you're not going to have a lot to, review because you've done everything right. So again, why wait till the end of your life to figure this out? So I learned somewhere along the line about a daily review. And it doesn't have to be every day. It can be every week. It could be once a month or every 6 months. It depends how often you come across conflicts and issues that you're having trouble with. So if you find that, you've had a really bad day or a really bad blow-up event, something like that, it can be very useful when you move away from that event to go back and review it. And the way that I suggest that this be done, it can be done in meditation, a contemplative state, just a quiet thinking state. It doesn't require a whole lot of altered states, but you want to get quiet. And the goal would be to sort of reimagine the event as it unfolded from your perspective, but also imagine the perspective from the other people who were at that event. And in this process, the goal is to figure out what could you do differently the next time around? Or how could you make amends for something that you realize you said in the heat of the moment that you really didn't mean? Or maybe you meant it, but now you want to take it back because you realize, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to deal with this in my life review. And I've heard people, when they hear about this concept, sometimes they will use it as a threat. So say Eben and I are in an argument or something. I'll use you as an example. We have never done this, but the threat part. We certainly get in arguments, but we're getting in an argument, and I'm really upset with him, and I'll say, well, you're going to hear about this in your life review, right? You're going to have to feel what I'm feeling right now. That's not the point of this. You are not to be thinking about how other people are misbehaving. You need to review how you're misbehaving. And I guarantee you, all of us are saying the wrong thing at the wrong moment, and we can always improve. And maybe it's because you didn't say something and you should have, right? So every little situation is different. It can be with your children, with your spouses, with a boss, with a coworker, a neighbor, anyone you're in conflict with. Review those moments. And when you start to do this, you might start to notice patterns where you're kind of making the same move over and over again. And these are your clues. It's also your triggers. What makes you angry that other people do is usually something within yourself that's a mirror of that you just don't see yet. So something that this is psychology kind of thing. What is that? Projection. When you project onto other people what your problems are, at any rate. So that's part of the process. So it can be really useful to look back at your entire life and kind of figure out what were those challenges and what were those patterns. And again, those are your clues for what you're really here to learn and grow from. And so, Eben was asked that question last night. You said it at the beginning today, too, that what is soul growth? What even is that? And he gave a very large, big answer. And then I thought a much simpler answer would be, soul growth is to become the best version of yourself. And everyone is unique, so that's different for each of us. And in the Hindu tradition, Dharma kind of speaks to that. So Dharma suggests that each and every one of us came here to be in this body for a specific purpose. And this goes all the way through nature. So in the Hindu tradition, Dharma is in every tree, every plant. They're here to, bring us oxygen. Everything in nature has that purpose. And so for us to really live our lives as the best version of ourselves, we're really living up to that principle. And if you think about the tapestry that Eben was talking about, each of us is one of those golden, sparkling lights. And we're part of this tapestry. You alone are responsible for your light on that tapestry. And blaming other people is not going to get you further. So this Dharma is like an inner wisdom, cosmic guidance. So it comes from within. And a lot of people like to think of a purpose, and they get a little confused by this, and I was one of them who thought this way, is that your purpose is something that you do. And someone wrote a book, Noman Naeem, he's from Toronto, he's an MD. He wrote a book called Healing from the Inside Out, and he's a critical care pulmonary medicine doctor dealing with people, in life and death situations. And he found one of the clues for people to heal from their illnesses was to find their purpose. And he found a lot of spiritual aspects involved with healing, but that one was really big. And he did, I thought, a really good job of explaining kind of the complementarity of your purpose and your mission. So I'm going to read you what he wrote. Our purpose is to fully awaken to our true nature and be a conduit for something greater than ourselves to express itself through us. Something greater than yourself can be the higher power, consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it. But our mission is to express our purpose in our own unique way based on our unique gifts, skills, aptitude, and experience. So your mission is what you do. Your purpose is who you are. And so near-death experiencers, they identify with this really well because near-death experiences come back and they realize, oh my gosh, I'm here for a reason. William was sharing with us that people who've had shared death experiences realize, oh my gosh, I'm here for a reason. Once you kind of glimpse that greater reality, you realize your place in it is important. Every single soul on earth is important to this process. You can't have a ripped piece of your tapestry, right? You want it to be beautiful and whole and perfect. And just who you are right now, I love how Anita puts it, is perfect. So don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just maybe you're not as attached consciously to what that purpose really is. And I'll tell you a story of myself in my seeking of my purpose. I wanted to know, what is it I'm supposed to do? And I had been in a career for 25 years, and I thought, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I need to be doing something else. And I would go into meditation. I had all these techniques. I would try to get this information. And what I was expecting was like a sentence of, you will do this. Or something very specific, written on a piece of paper like you would see an assignment at school. That's how my mind thought. And so I learned from another teacher. I have had many, many spiritual teachers, and they've kind of conglomerated all the best of. But this teacher, he would say, if you have a goal, any goal, an intention, imagine the feeling you would have if you were achieving that goal. And so I began to do that with this purpose. First, I had to get fed up. It wasn't working, and I decided I didn't care anymore. And I was violently didn't care anymore. No, never mind. You know how you get sometimes when you're frustrated. That's how I was about this. Just forget it. Probably some stronger language than that. And because I was so frustrated, wanting to know, what am I supposed to be doing? And it was after I let go of it and stopped caring and just decided to do what this teacher had said. Just pretend you're already fulfilling your purpose. What does that feel like? And so for me, I found words like I would feel fulfilled. I would feel I was authentic. I would feel grateful. I would just feel like I was contributing. And so I started to generate that feeling inside, even though it wasn't on the outside. And that's how I'd spend my meditations doing this. And then, lo and behold, things started to happen in my life, unbelievable things. I ended up quitting my job of 25 years. I ended up leaving a relationship, importantly to do, and a very destructive relationship. And I moved to another state, and then I met Eben. And then my life really changed, because this is not what I ever would have imagined I would be doing. And that's why, I learned that my purpose is actually to be who I am. And for me, I really identify with love. And so I often, haven't done it this time, but I often will talk about, that to be the love that you are, that we all come from this love. And love was a thing that would come up a lot when I would ask my purpose, and I would dismiss it. I would say, what? No, everybody has to do that. What are you talking? No, something better. And it was just nutty, because what's better than being love? But it just seemed so simple that it didn't seem like enough. And yet now I realize it is, because I can move through my life consciously exuding the love from my heart. And I actually learned it through heart math, who some of you may be familiar with, who talk about the electromagnetic field of the heart that expands and contracts, and it expands and contracts based on your emotional state. So the larger it is, the more love and joy you have in your heart. And so that gave me kind of an anchor, a physical sort of anchor to imagine. And so when I walk around in the world, I'll imagine this, love, whatever it is, love field expanding and contracting, and they've also shown that it affects the people around you. And so I love to do this in airports, in stores, when I'm shopping, and it's not like I'm walking around, actively doing it, but it's just in my mind, and I know I've been doing it so long that my heart automatically does it. And sometimes people will feel it and mention it, and those are more sensitive people. But I know it's affecting people. And so this is something all of us can do, but you might have a slightly different purpose. And, it might be similar to other purposes, because in reality, near-death experiencers will tell you that to love one another is the highest purpose. To treat each other, that golden rule, literally written into the fabric of the universe, which I fully credit to Eben, he made that up, I think. And that's who we are. We're here to love each other. And so your question about, why does the world look so crazy? I like to think of it as it's a gift of desperation, kind of like we're not there yet, so things have to get worse for more people to wake up. So we know who those people are. It's not the people in this room. You guys are there, or you wouldn't be in this room. Some of you probably to a greater extent than others. But this is why we're here, to bring the world into this higher level. That's that golden pure center of consciousness. And so when it seems like everything is going on around us, that's a reflection of our collective inner worlds, and a lot of us still have a lot of trouble in our inner worlds. And so people who have this kind of more advanced way of thinking, we're here to help other people, not to convince them of our way of thinking, but to meet them where they are, feed them little tidbits as you can, be there for them when they're ready to have these conversations. You can't just tell someone what to believe, right? They have to find it themselves. But all of you are, I'm sure, at different stages of your spiritual journeys, and I expect that some of you nodding your heads are very familiar with this information. And so we want to really encourage you to tap into awakening your unique self, whatever that may be. And even if it seems simple, when you get those clues, believe them, trust them. Like yesterday, we did the exercise to open and trust to your spiritual experiences. Today, we're going to tap into becoming more of that authentic purpose of who you are. And it won't be in words. It'll be in a feeling that you have. And the words can come later to kind of interpret what all of that feeling state really means. But this is what we're going to do next. So now you can find your spot on the floor. You're welcome to stay in your chair. Remember to align yourself vertically with the long rectangle of the room. So that fits everybody in better and gets the speakers on both sides of your ears. Try not to sit in front of these speakers because the sound over, Vijay, the sound behind the speakers is not as nearly
it's
as
stronger
good
right in front of the speakers than
as
out.
in front of the speakers.
With plenty of room in the back.
Yes.
Yeah, there's room back there.
Because up here we do not get the same signals as you. So find your spot. I'll wait till everyone is relaxed. And just like yesterday, when we're finished, we want to hear from you, those of you willing to share about your experience or frustrations or successes, both ways. And these frequencies are different from yesterday. The frequencies we've been listening to were based on the heart. These are frequencies based on the new moon. And I checked our cycle. Wednesday is a new moon, so we're definitely coming up on that new moon energy. So we're right on schedule. And for those of you who don't know, the full moon kind of symbolizes release. That might be a good time to do your daily review when you're trying to release some things. But now we're going to be creating, and the new moon is excellent for that. So if you're already lying down, start to breathe a little slower. Find a comfortable position. All right, we'll start by doing 3 ohms. Bring your attention to this moment, here and now, calm and relaxed. Become aware of your breath as you inhale and exhale. As you breathe in, silently say, let. As you breathe out, silently say, go. Let go. Now, open your awareness to all possibilities. As an eternal soul, realize your natural resonance reflects your purpose, setting the stage for events in your life. Now, feel the vibrations and let go. Now, generate a feeling of gratitude, trust, and allowing. Say to yourself, I welcome and embrace my authentic self. Bring your attention to planet Earth, the place where your soul grows on its journey. Earth is where you are grounded to your life's purpose and mission. Imagine the feeling you would have if you were living your true life's purpose. Authentic, fulfilled, content. trust that whatever serves the highest good will begin to unfold in my life, aligned with my greater purpose. Now, rest in this moment, resonating your true life's purpose, authentic, fulfilled, content. Turn from your experience and remember to resonate your true life's purpose. Okay, gently and slowly wiggle your fingers and toes. Give yourself a little hug. Take your time. And as you feel ready, we'd love to hear any experiences or not. I didn't hear much snoring this time. Yes, Vijay. We have a microphone. There you are.
It was interesting. Yesterday, when we did this, the first thing I had was a really intense pain, headache around my left eye. I said, probably just, once did that. Exactly thing happened today, too. It started that, and when the sound started, intense, and then it took a while for it to sort of then disappear.
Interesting. It's not unusual for pains that you didn't have before to suddenly become noticeable. It is interesting it happened the same way twice in a row and then went away. So I would just keep an eye on that. You're a doctor, so I'm not too concerned. Yeah. Yeah, we do have a neurosurgeon on site if needed.
And you can always ask in your next meditation,
Yes.
Why?
Why?
Explain this to me. And often
Sometimes
the universe will give you an answer.
Yeah, sometimes your body will give you the answer, those pains. Some people talk about body talk. There's a system where you can ask your body. So, anyone else? I ran into someone on the beach yesterday, someone who shared a beautiful experience with all of us about seeing her space family. And I just wanted to share with you that I don't know if you're here now, but anyway, she said I could share. She said that she's used to doing meditation and that it really wasn't like meditation, what we were doing yesterday. And so she decided to just tell herself she's going on a journey. And so that probably is a more accurate description of what we're doing. It's a little bit more shamanic than what a lot of people have learned in meditation, where you kind of empty your mind. But we use meditation as more of a general term, knowing that there's many subsets within that. Yes, here. Microphone's coming. He sees you. There you are.
So yesterday when we did it, I was so altered. I was really altered. And I was wondering if that was the frequency change you were talking about earlier. Today, I can feel now I am a little altered. But it was kind of like what I was saying to myself was what I always say to myself about my purpose and how I want to give myself.
Yeah.
But yesterday, it was like I'd done so many guided meditations. I'd done so many guided meditations, and I kind of go like, nothing
Yeah.
ever did much. But yesterday, it was like I was affected for hours. It was just so intense.
Well-
was that frequency difference you were talking about?
There
Being
are different frequencies,
Right.
yes. And everyone is unique and will respond to frequencies in different ways. So that's why we like to give you two pretty different ones to notice that difference. The other aspect might be that your first experience was your more powerful experience. And since you're already, you said it lasted all day, you may still have some kind of residual of that. And so today's didn't feel as intense. So either one. But I would listen, if I were you, I would want to listen to yesterday's again.
That's Heart Center 2.
Heart Center 2. You can find it on the website, yes. And there's also, do you have those bookmarks? Did you?
I left them all at the bookstore.
There, at the bookstore, there's a bookmark that's a companion. Oh, you have the bookmark? Okay, well, if anyone else hasn't seen it, it's a 33-day journey, just an email drip campaign. You get an email for 33 days all about the main concepts of living in a mindful universe. But it also includes practices. And as you move along, I think by maybe day 15 or so, or 16, you get a 20-minute version of Heart Center 2 for free. So one will be guided, one will not be guided. so that you have the option to have words or no words. Yes.
How do you keep from clicking out?
Well, that's tricky. Practice. Rinse and repeat. Because I used to click out every time. And what we mean by clicking out is where you're lying there, you're in the meditation, and then you wake up and you're like, what just happened? And you might not even, I might be saying, oh, when you went to the earth, and you're thinking, what? We went to the earth? Because you didn't hear me say that. And that's a little bit different than sleeping. Some of you might fall asleep, and then you kind of feel a little groggy, or you kind of know what it feels like to wake up from sleep. But clicking out, you just feel exactly the same. And so did anyone feel like they had that phenomena? Yeah, it's really common. And so the more you do this, the more you become accustomed to listening to the tones. Eben would say that you could, and I would too, you can go back and revisit those moments in a later meditation. What happened during that click out? And I've heard it also referred to as clock out. And that's kind of a little easier for some people. Yeah. So something's happening, you're just not remembering.
Yeah, my early experiences with click out were that I would almost always find in later meditation that much had happened, but I didn't bring it back. It's that same issue of how come everybody doesn't have an NDE. You know, it has to do with your kind of readiness and your state, and sometimes we're just not ready to bring all that back.
And where you are
But
today.
then ask again in the next meditation, because the universe has a way of giving us that cumulative knowledge.
Anyone else?
There's one
Way in the back. Way in the back. Thanks for standing up. Couldn't see you.
Yes, hi, thank you. Yeah, I have one share and then one question. During today, it wasn't like a major journey, but very centering. And then towards the end, I did have that intention to sort of open up the heart and allow my true self to be revealed. That was the intention. Toward the end, I did see a very center light, and it's like one of those sort of Pac-Man faces, or like on your emojis. I did see like a face in that light, sort of just eyes and smile, just like a very big smile opening, and just sort of, it's a very like comforting feeling, and it kind of reassures me that like all is well, and it just very smiling, and that was like the answer that was sort of needed without anything verbal.
Yeah, good.
And then it went, into just brightness and embracing feeling. That was the experience. I often, during a lot of meditative, or even in satsangs or with kirtan, and sometimes I go to my space and I close my eyes. A lot of times I see people in the room or speakers sitting on the podium, and then when I close my eyes, that image, as a light image, remains after I close my eyes. Like just a moment before I stood up and speak, I could see like all of you sitting here when I was closing my eyes for a few minutes, but it was all almost like alien forms, but like as light forms sitting. Sometimes I would see, after I turned my head away from the stage, I would see speakers' forms appear in the back of my mind, but as lights. So I'm not sure that's just like a memory residue, but I'm also curious from a neurosurgeon point of view, a brain point of view, what may be happening, if you have any input.
Well, I'm not sure I have input directly, but I mean, certainly the fact that you're describing something that's not the exact same as the image, so you said this kind of alien nature to it. I mean, to me, that is, I often describe that much of the coming into knowledge about this is knowledge through identification, where our kind of mental awareness becomes larger aspects of the scene. And if that's kind of where that imaging is coming from, to me it makes perfect sense that you might see a kind of like having a kind of a clearer vision of spirit form that's not the same as physical form. And that maybe, through this kind of thinning of the veil of the meditation or just your long-term practice of meditation, you have that thinning of the veil that allows you to kind of see this kind of spiritual essence of people that has a different appearance than their material bodies.
And some people would call that an aura. But what you're describing, I've had that too, way before I've ever done anything spiritual. Isn't there just a visual phenomena too, where if you're looking at something and then you close your eyes, you kind of still see it?
Yeah, there certainly can be, just some residual neuronal activity in your occipital cortex from the original visual stimulation, and that can be something that you still perceive.
But you can use that to create something larger, right? The physiological phenomena can then be. With your mind, you can imagine, oh no, that's their auric energy that I'm seeing, and it can grow from there. So that's what I used to do, is turn those little images into their auras, and then they would do different things then when I had that intention to view them in that way instead of just a visual phenomena.
And it has a lot to do also with the phenomenon that when we look around this world, it turns out that probably about 90% of the information, like in my brain right now, what I'm looking at, about 90% of the visual information is being made up by the brain based on past experience, because there's not enough bandwidth for all of the information to truly come into your awareness. So it's the mind tends to kind of fill in the gaps, and there's some of that process probably going on too in your kind of after imaging effect.
Okay, last question.
And on that note, when we're trying so hard to get there with meditation, especially those of us who are beginning, what is your feelings on past life regression compared to meditation when we're so anxious to have the clarity, and not each one of us are going to have an NDE? Is it more aggressive to do that, or is it?
I know what you're asking.
Because you're questioning, I feel like I question my meditation.
Yeah.
Am I seeing, or is it the brain?
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the thing. It's you going to a hypnotic regressionist is perfectly fine. Then you're just having a facilitator help guide you there. You're still finding the information. I've had hypnotic regressions. They're not doing it for you, but it kind of gives you that reassurance that someone's there to support you through it. It's kind of like a medium. We can have our own connections with those who have died, but we don't trust them. But a medium can give us information, and we might feel better about it. But also you started by saying you try so hard to meditate. And meditate is not about trying. Meditate is about releasing, letting go, and allowing. So even changing that perspective might help you too. And you can be frustrated because you want this other thing, and you got to let that go. The frustration will get in your way. Yeah. The expectation of what you want will get in your way. Yes. So I hope that was helpful. So I think with that, we'll have some closing comments. I just want to thank all of you for being here with us this week, whether you've come and gone throughout the different events. And as you become more authentic in your purpose, remember you're contributing to the whole. And you're all incredibly important. We always say, no soul left behind. And everything you do affects that thread in the tapestry. And all of us together can create that tapestry as it becomes more golden and pure, as each of us becomes the perfect version of ourselves. And Eben?
I would just add that today is the first day of the rest of your life. And I hope that something that we've offered, or that our fellow presenters for this symposium have offered, that will help you to truly plant a seed in your soul growth that will lead to tremendous fruition and satisfaction, coming into meaning and purpose. So, namaste.
And thank you for doing this.
Thank you all.
Because it helps us.
Thank you all. Blessings to you.
Thank you both so much. All right, so that wraps up the workshops for our symposium. So again, a big round of applause for Dr. Eben Alexander and Karen Newell. As a reminder, we will be having the panel this evening during satsang. That'll be at 8 o'clock. If you do have questions, you're welcome to take your questions if you want to write them down. For any of the presenters, I'll repeat who they are. Eben Alexander and Karen Newell, Anita Morjani, Monica Williams, and William Peters. So if you do have questions for any of our speakers, please, you can take them either to reception or I'll be here for a few moments. You're welcome to hand them over to me. Yes? No. Yep. Just a reminder that the boutique is open. Today we have blueberry mango smoothies.
Ooh.
Something I know, right? That sounds yummy.
We are.
So, and we have books available as well. And today we have our yoga class at 4 o'clock, followed by the dinner at 6:45. 5:45, followed by the Gita Parayana at 7, and then satsang at 8. So we'll close out with 3 Oms in our closing mantra. Om. Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnat Mudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Peace Peace Peace. Om Bolo Satguru Sivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Bolo Swami Vishnu Devananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Namah Shivaya. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Isn't it that other thing? Yeah, it's not just, it's something.
Sorry, there is a 2 p.m. workshop that is happening, not a part of the symposium, so it's not related to near-death experience. It has to do with ecological building structures and, yeah. Yes, yeah, near Jhana at 2 o'clock. Yeah, near Jhana from the Vanadurga temple in Colombia.
Thank you. Thank you. That was good.
Thank you.
We're not putting it up. Look at us. We're like, I don't know. You did it.
Hopefully people will show up. So. Excuse me. Thank you, sir.